Hi.
Hi.
I am so excited that I am here with the lovely Anne Jonas.
Hmm.
Oh my goodness. I met Anne at a networking community that we both participate in. And what I love about that particular community is they really ask us to connect with each other outside of the meeting and really get to know each other deeply so that we are more likely to refer because we actually know who the other person is. So Anne and I went on a connect, probably one of my first handful of connects. And instantly it was like, oh, my sister is here. I felt so connected to Anne right off the bat. And Anne is a powerful coach, powerful woman. And I'm so excited that she's here. Thank you, Anne, for being here.
Thank you for putting this together and providing the space to bring all of us women into your fold.
Absolutely. Yay. So really quickly, I'm going to actually read Anne's bio because I like to start off with just a little piece of who we are and what we're doing in the world, and then we will throw out all the rules and dive right in. So Anne Jonas is a transformational coach who is passionate about helping and supporting others to become more of who they truly are. She approaches her work from a holistic, intuitive, spiritual perspective with decades of experience as a body worker and birth doula. Today, her most powerful gift is being a personal life coach, a writer, speaker, and workshop facilitator. This is a quote from Anne. My desire is to support women in the unveiling of the higher self and allowing spirit to bring abundant happiness and love. And what makes her unique is that she simply trusts the process of life, and she encourages other women to do the same. She has had a life full of experiences, and she'll probably share some of those today that bring deep wisdom into the work that she does with others. And I'm so grateful that this powerful woman is here with us today.
Thank you for that.
Absolutely. So I know one of the things that you kind of changed the name of your stuff, and I'm so fascinated in why you made that decision to move from kind of the tagline that you had before about the work that you do that's so transformational with women, and why you chose to create this different wording around your path. So can you go there a little bit and tell us about that transition?
Absolutely. Well, it's interesting because the lotus concept came to me almost 20 years ago when I was actually looking for a design piece. I wanted to have a tattoo. And so I was with a friend, a dear friend who was going through a cancer journey, a life-changing, transformational journey. We were in her healing space, in her healing room. And I say it was kind of like a God moment because there was this stained glass window, and it doesn't look anything like a flower of any sort, just color. And this light came through into this room and, came into my consciousness, lotus flower. And I thought, wow, what a great idea. So I went searching for an image. And so the lotus flower really, as an entity, started me on this path. And I started my work as the Lotus Touch, which is my body work and birth doula practice.
Gotcha.
That was the first incarnation. And then the Lotus Coach developed from that, and the Lotus Coach, which was the tagline you spoke about, moving from horrendous to heroic, really reflected on the story and the experiences that I've had and what I've moved through.
Yeah.
And then that felt like it wasn't quite enough. It hadn't landed completely. So the Lotus Path is what has birthed out of that whole experience and incorporates the elements and the seasonal cycles, which I've always been attracted to, because everything is a cycle, and it moves through just on our planet, day and night. They represent a complete cycle.
Yeah.
And the seasons on the, that we move through here on the earth. So that really brought it full circle for me, the circle word, to bring together, all of my experiences, and that we are all on the lotus path, every single one of us, as we move through our life, the choices that we make, the experiences that show up. So this is how I hold the idea of no mud, no lotus. We all have our own muddy versions of our life, and through that blooms our lotus.
Yeah. Thank you. It's funny because I remember the first time I heard you speak, and you used the horrendous to heroic. Mm-hmm. And there was this piece of me that I felt split in two. There was the piece of me that could totally relate, like, yeah, it was fucking horrendous. Like, that's a great word for what my journey has been. But there was this other part, like you said, that felt like it was incomplete. Mm-hmm. That there was yes, that was the journey, but I don't know what it was about that. And it's interesting because I've just seen you, like, something opened up in you also as you started to change the language that you were using around that path. And I think that's such a beautiful illustration of the flexibility of women. And I know I've talked about this with other women, but one of the places where I feel like we've lost our power is by being told that we are wishy-washy, that we are unpredictable, that we are too changeable in our nature. And the reality is that our flexibility and adaptability is one of our greatest superpowers. The fact that we can take this learning and incorporate it into our whole system and come out the other side with this other fuller, greater piece is a miracle. It's amazing. And yet many of us have been shut down and told these negative messages about that changeability and flexibility of the feminine. So
absolutely.
I love that. I love that.
Well, that we have the space and the room, we can reinvent ourselves.
Yes.
As women, we physically have all the material to birth a child, to go through that transformation as maiden to mother. Like, that's a transition that happens when we birth. And so in that vein, it's in our makeup, it's in our physical matter that we can reinvent, that we can create. And you're right that it does get diminished by your wishy-washy. So it's just a reframe.
Yes, exactly. So many reframes. That's my whole job right now, is like, let's reframe all of that shit, because it's just no longer useful.
Well, I mean, this is exactly what we're all going through globally right now.
Exactly.
Global reframe. I mean, we can choose to say the word crisis, or we can talk about it as in, well, what's coming? What is this leading us toward?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, I love that. I love that. Yay.
Yay.
So this word power to me is just a fascinating word in general, because I have spoken to so many women, and some women don't identify with the word at all because it feels very masculine to them, and it doesn't seem like it fits how they feel about their own personal power. And I know that I've used fierce in replacement of power, because I feel that that energy is still there of stepping forward and kind of pushing through barriers or whatever it may be, but it feels more feminine to me. So I'm just curious about, when you hear the word power, what actually bubbles up for you? What is your definition? Or if you could rewrite the definition of the word power, how would you play with that?
Well, it's interesting because power to me is about connection. And if you think about it, when you plug something in to an electrical outlet, or you flip a switch, you're making a connection. You're making that connection of matter of the electrical components and all of the science behind it.
Right, right.
The power that we have here on our beautiful Mama Earth, that power allows us to have connection. And so the choice is, and it's always going to come down to choice, everything. Do we stand in our power as we are feeling connected, or do we feel disempowered when we are feeling disconnected? And so that's what I feel. You know, we talk about power as in power over.
Right, right.
We power through. We power up. You know, all of these different ways that we can embody the word itself.
Mm-hmm.
And words are just shared meaning.
Right, exactly.
We just have a word and we decide that's what it means. And I agree and you agree, and, you know, then we have it. So yes, unfortunately, power had a negative connotation because it was power over. It's similar to that reframe that I look at when we talk about celebrating our wins and our accomplishments versus bragging or boasting. You know, are we doing it because we're standing in our power? Are we doing it because we're feeling connected to ourselves in that particular experience or in our life? Or are we doing it because there's something missing? There's something lacking, and then we want to push ourselves onto others.
It's interesting. So, something that's coming up for me right now as you're speaking about that is the power of reclaiming a word. So I know in many oppressed communities, there is like a taking back of a word that was used to oppress or push down or displace a group of people. And I noticed myself really like doing that a lot. I put a post about bragging and I got a lot of pushback for it. And I think really what it was is exactly what you're describing. We have a shared meaning around the word brag that has kind of a negative connotation, right? That it's egotistical or it's arrogant, and it doesn't actually bring across this felt sense of confidence. It's much more that insecurity or the I have to stick it in your face or, you know, whatever. And there was a part of me that my reaction back was kind of like, actually, I'd like to reclaim that word. Yeah. I don't want it to mean that. Can we create shared meaning around brag and like in the reframed version of what that means, which is to stand up and say, yeah, I'm a badass at that. Yeah, I'm really good at that. Like I can own that. I can accept that. And I'm not putting you down or diminishing you or, you know, sticking it in anybody's face. I'm simply owning it, you know,
Absolutely.
To the best of my abilities. So I love that you brought that up because I think that a lot of these words, I'm just so excited about reclaiming and reframing in some way. And I see a lot of barriers when we don't have shared meaning around a particular word. I see that in families all the time as a therapist. Yeah. When people are throwing out the word respect and everybody has a very different actual meaning for what that is. For the parents, it's often like you're following you're doing what I tell you to do. And for the kid, it's like you're stopping and you're listening to me and you're letting me know that you're listening to me, right? And they have very different perceptions of what that word actually means. And we have to create that shared meaning before we can all be on the same page talking about the same issue. Right?
Yeah. Along those lines of, what do I expect from an experience is different from what you expect from an experience. Exactly. So, you know, as always, communication is our way to connection.
Yeah, I love that. All right, my dear. So let's drop into your story. I know it's a powerful one. And I love the fact that so many women that I know personally and also professionally, we teach our own journey. Like we teach aspects of our own journey, helping people avoid maybe some of the deeper pitfalls that we fell into, while also knowing that people have to have their own experience with it, that we can't lay out a perfect formula and have somebody follow that and go, see, you made it, you did it just like I did. It doesn't work that way. It's messy, it's convoluted, there's 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, there's a whole thing.
Yes.
So for me, I guess the frame or the question would be, what has been your journey with power?
Hmm. Hmm. My journey with power is, for me, it's a reflection back to how I've made decisions.
Mm,
And meaning that I know that everything is a choice on a spiritual level. Consciously, we make choices. Unconsciously, we make choices. So I have brought in all the players in my life, relationships, co-workers, fellow students, my family members, my in-law family members, all of the different people and players,
mm-hmm.
because our learning is based on how we see ourselves often. It's
Yeah.
the reflection through the different components in our life that shines back and says, I'm doing this really well. I'm doing this really poorly. Here's my growth edge. This is what I'm missing. And we can absolutely, and we do that work personally
Right.
through therapy, through
Right.
coaching, through all kinds of personal growth work. But I believe the biggest part of our power is in how we are seeing ourselves through the eyes of others,
Mm,
and then recognizing, am I being triggered to the point that I'm going to be blown backwards
right.
and fall back into a three-dimensional um, way of seeing that I'm a victim?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or do we see that material, do we take that and then say, what can I gain from this? What and how is this going to serve me? Part of my story is related to my family and my parents and their own inner struggles with their own victim space of
Yeah.
what happened as we go back generations. And when a huge piece of my story, which is when my father, after my parents had been divorced for 25 years, and that happened when I was 11. In his story, in his victim perceived way, and in his hurt, he took my mother's life. He showed
Mm,
up at her doorstep and pulled a gun out of a bag and shot and killed her. And I got that information from my brother, who had been called to the house to
wow.
hear that, what it had transpired. And when we went to see him in jail the next day, he said, it just had to happen.
Mm,
She treated me as a third or fourth class citizen. Now that is as far
mm,
away from the truth that I knew.
yeah.
But what that shares is that we all have our own truth.
Yeah.
And then it's affected by the stories that create that picture. So this was a huge life reconfiguration for me. I
Yeah.
mean, not only had my mother died, but now my dad was in jail, and it was murder, and it was all this. And I was in my mid 30s. And what I really look at, and I can actually remember a moment of just sitting and going, okay, what is this for?
Mm, mm,
And I'm going to be grateful for all of the work that I had done prior to that.
right. Right.
And I do believe that everything sets itself up in alignment, because
Right.
we're not just given something massive if we don't have the tools. But we have to remember that we have the tools.
Yeah.
And so I just said,
Yeah.
wow, this is for me to grow. there's so many stories within that story. And what's interesting is that I met my partner that I was to marry 4 years after that.
Mm-hmm.
And when we were just about to get married, she was diagnosed with melanoma. And so we went through a 4-year cancer journey. My daughter was born during that time, and she was left, at a little over 2 without her other mom.
Mm.
But I'm going to go back and I'm going to say that I needed to go through the experience with my mom and my dad and that whole massively horrendous piece to be able to hold the container for what I was going to go through with my partner,
Right.
my life partner,
Right.
the parent of my child. So, and her journey, a cancer journey, is not just the only the person that has a cancer, and everything is about transformation. Everything is.
Yeah.
So there's a lot. Yeah, go ahead.
Let me ask you this, because it's so much is percolating as you're sharing. So there's 2 things. As a transformational coach, as someone who works with this, right? Like you and I both like to play at the deep end of the pool. And the reason we're good at playing at the deep end of the pool is because of the shit that we've gone through. Exactly what you just described, right? If we hadn't had those experiences and learned to be comfortable in the discomfort of the intensity of all of those emotions and all of those triggers and everything else, we would not be able to hold the level of space that we do currently for our clients, right? It's just, to us, that's a no-brainer, but it's not necessarily a no-brainer to everybody else out there, right? So what would you say to the person who's had a traumatic experience that really rocked their world, who is not yet ready to see it as a gift?
Well, part of me is going to say that what I believe 100% is that we receive many gifts in this lifetime, and most of them come in ugly packaging. So I get that there has to be a reframe to move from the victim experience into, how am I going to use this? How is this going to serve me? And Jack Canfield, I learned an equation from him: E plus R equals O. The events and the experiences in our life, the E plus the reactions or the responses, equals O, which is an outcome.
Right.
So that reframe is saying that regardless of what I experienced, it's how I'm reacting to it. That's the story I'm going to build up.
Yes.
So I'm going to start there.
Yes.
Is, how are you reacting to this? What is your response to this experience?
Right.
The ultimate is to get to the place where we have gratitude and we say thank you.
Right.
We say thank you for the big stuff as much as we say thank you for the little stuff. But there is a place to cross. There's a place to navigate between those two. And part of it is really sitting in a place of trust.
Yeah.
Trust and acceptance, and that there is a larger entity at hand. Now, I'm going to be honest and say that not everybody's ready to go there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And make that shift.
Yeah.
And we're all here on the path that we're meant to be on.
Right.
And it's up to us to be able to be a witness to ourselves, to step back. I feel like that's what happened with my mom, and, what happened going through the years of huge discomfort and navigating the anger and the fear that was coming up around cancer and what life looks like. And so I continue to just go in and say, how is this going to serve me? And that this statement might suck, but there's some gnarly shit that we have to break through when we come here to be human.
Yeah.
And it's not an easy journey.
It's a myth, right? It's a myth that it's even supposed to be.
Yeah, it's not. We choose this because it presents challenges. Now, we all know people that have had a life of ease, and that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm also going to tell you the life of challenge and disruption and transformation is also beautiful.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, about perspective. So we're not all here to do the same thing either.
Right.
And make any in any way that we draw some judgment, or, I'm not good enough, or I couldn't possibly navigate that. It wasn't yours to navigate.
Right.
Right. I just shared, I've been through some crazy shit, some fucked up stuff, and my house didn't burn down in the fires,
Right. Right.
So much of that has happened, or I haven't had, personal assault, physical assault. That's another story,
right.
So it's really not about like mine's better or mine's worse. Like, we all get the experiences through our energetic choice that serve us.
Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness. I love it.
See, so I guess I'm hoping I answered your question.
Yes. The way that women do, right?
Reframe.
So I want to come back to this word trust, because you've used it many times. And I really believe that's a place where I see people get stuck a lot, right? Especially those with fairly complex trauma histories, or they had a traumatic experience and they never really got the validation and support at the time that they actually needed in order to be able to kind of come through the other side. So what would you say to someone, because to me that is also power, right? Trust, acceptance, vulnerability, dropping into what's real right now, how I feel right now, what's touching my heart right now. All of those things are so big. And what I see, and I've had this experience myself, is a lack of trust in ourselves as women, in the power of sharing our stories. Mm-hmm. I know so many women who their first response is like, oh, hell no, I could never tell that story to a group of people. Mm. And my first question is like, why not? Like, how is that serving you or anybody else to keep that locked inside, when we know that somebody sharing their story opens up the door and really gives others permission to do the same, right? To go in and go, oh, so that feels so good to hear somebody else's story, to see myself in somebody else's story, even if it's not exact. We're touching on the parts that are common or that feel resonant for us. So trust, speak more to that, especially to the person who's just like, how the fuck am I supposed to trust when my whole life has been people breaking my trust? How do you reframe that?
Well, I want to say the first thing that's showing up for me is that nobody can do anything to anybody else. Like, this is part of that equation. Yes, you can receive an experience from someone else, but it's your decision whether or not you're going to break that bond of trust. I have been labeled by a few players in my family and people over my life as naive and gullible.
Gotcha.
And what that shows me really is that no matter, and this is my constitution, this is what I came in with.
Right.
and I believe everybody has access to this, is that yes, I've made mistakes and I've lost things and I've given away, let's say, given away my power. I've given away my power to somebody else because of whatever was feeling less than
Right.
what I was holding on to in that dynamic, that relationship. And then I got hurt. Like that's the cycle, right?
Right.
And that at that point we say, well, fuck that. I'm not going to get hurt again.
Right.
I'm not going to open up myself.
Right.
Now I did it the other way. I just kept getting hurt and then getting in, and then and then I'd be like, oh, look at that thing I want to trust and love on. Oh, they're not ready for me yet. And then so that's the little gullible, naive part. But I'm going to take that as my power.
Right.
Because what I'm going to say is that's more information about what I'm capable of handling.
Yeah.
That's the trust. Trust that, and I know this phrase gets thrown around and I use it and people don't like it, but I'm going to tell you, everything happens for a reason, because life is designed for you. We don't get things that happen to us. It looks like that.
Right.
But everything happens for us. It's for us to open our hearts more. It's for us to have more available within ourselves. It's for us to be able to teach. Every single one of us, no matter how old we are, no matter what we've been through, has value.
Right.
And the more, you've said this a few times, but it's another way of saying my mess is my message.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You don't have to be a coach or a workshop facilitator, a speaker, a leader. You don't have to do any of that.
Right.
The way you walk around on the planet, the way you speak to your family members, the way you speak to yourself, that's a big one. We diminish, and especially as women, we cut down our own power. And I've done it. I'm going to raise my hand. What I'm sharing here is because I'm familiar. I'm familiar.
You mean you're not the guru? You're not the one who hasn't, actually had those experiences, and you're just telling us what to do?
Well, that's part of the vulnerability, right? Brene Brown, shame. Vulnerability, saying, I fucked up.
Yeah.
I've made mistakes.
Yeah.
And I've hurt others. I've hurt myself.
Yeah.
But nothing is nothing is not reframable. Everything can be shifted.
It's so funny. I'm thinking about that book by was it Marie Forleo called "Everything Is Figure Outable." Yep. It's like you just named your own book. Like everything is reframable.
Exactly.
And I love that, because part of what I resonate with you is, like, again, this juxtaposition of like having been through some deep, dark shit, but also being this almost like eternal optimist, right? Who just like sees through it all to this little nugget of light, even if it's covered in a bunch of shit. And it's like, oh, look, there's a light. There's a light there. And everybody's like, what are you talking about? There's all this shit and there's this. And we're like, no, but don't you see it? There's this light in there. I got the same thing. You're an optimist, Michelle. You're naive. You're not cautious enough, or you're not whatever. And one piece for me was like, actually I am fairly cautious, but I also trust. I trust deeply, and I trust myself. And so the reality is that when I run into one of those things, right, like I've got to I've got to be with.
Yeah.
Right. And I love it.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. At this point in our conversation, is there anything that you feel is kind of missing in the conversation around power. We've touched a lot on your journey and how you might reframe some situations where people felt powerless in their experience. And what is it that we haven't touched on yet that is bubbling up?
Yeah, I would say that the work that I do with me, like for me personally, and then the work I do with my clients and at my retreats is really about connection.
Mm-hmm.
And that we are constantly moving through the space of being connected and being disconnected.
Mm-hmm.
And that compassion, I would say compassion is one of the biggest places that we all need to come from with a little more resonance, and mostly for ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, this life journey, and I love, this sounds so crazy. I love what we're all going through right now, because what it's sharing with me, what I'm resonating with, is that every single conscious being on the planet right now today is aware of the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We are all in the same boat.
Yeah.
And this teacher is helping us to be reflective of our personal responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's our personal responsibility to ourselves.
Yeah.
So you have to be the most important person to you. But that doesn't mean.
But that's selfish, Anne.
I
know. Selfish, Anne.
But let's go back to the oxygen mask on the plane. Right? You are incapable of serving anybody else if you have not put that on first.
Yes. Thank you. Yes.
So yeah, that's the thing. Selfish is another 4-letter word.
It's that reframable word, right?
Exactly. Yes. But we serve everybody better when we are connected to ourselves.
Absolutely.
First. Yes. So I just want to bring that last piece in, that, you know, remembering that you are your most important person. And that doesn't mean, based on everything we've already talked about, that anybody is less than.
Right.
Most important doesn't mean less important.
Right.
That there is a less important. Just most important can stand right by itself.
Yeah.
So I can stand on my little mountain that says I am the most important person for me.
Yeah.
And that I gift everybody else the opportunity to stand on their own little mountain. And then we all stand on our mountains together. And that is my wish for our collective, that we can trust ourselves, accept the experiences, that they're here for our guidance and our learning, that we can bring that love back to our hearts. And that when we do all of that, that collective consciousness, that will support the healing of the planet and continue to share that beautiful vibration throughout all beings.
I love it. And I love that image. Like, I really feel like I want to just reinforce that image, because I know that I'm going to be holding on to it whenever I have those, like, I'm selfish and I'm so focused on myself moments, is the image of everyone standing on their own mountaintop. Because the other thing that brings me back to that you spoke of earlier is choice. Choice is power. When I can step back from my own situation and look at how it makes me feel, and look at the beliefs that it's touching on and what I think about it and my old stories and all of that stuff, and I take that just brief step back and I look at it all, now I'm in a place where I can go, okay, what do I want to do with that? What do I want to do? Do I want to sit in it? Do I want to play with it? Do I want to release it? Do I want to go back in it? But that place of choice is, to me, power, right? Coming back to a place of choice, which includes when you're in a shitty situation, how do I choose to use this lesson? How do I choose to reframe the situation for myself? How do I step back into a place of choice if I let myself give my power away? All of those things that you spoke of, to me, it comes back to kind of choice and also compassion for our experience. And the compassion piece that you brought in earlier, I think is so deeply important. Compassion is endless. There is no end to compassion. And I feel like another superpower is the capacity for compassion, and how our compassion, it gives us capacity for everything else in our lives. When we're in touch with our hearts, when we're in touch with our compassion, it gives us the capacity to hold and deal with the shit that gets thrown at us. It's
Absolutely.
just so, I think that's why so many of us are seeking connection right now during this time, is like, please just like, let me connect to somebody. Let me connect. Then I can kind of re-empower myself, because I've been fed by that connection, right? And I can come back a little bit more to myself because I've had that chance to resonate with another beautiful being. And
absolutely. I mean, the thing is, you know, we are social beings.
we are.
Here.
Yes.
You know, that just is.
Yes.
And we've seen, you know, through the animal kingdom, you know, an isolated animal, not part of its tribe, will not survive.
Yeah.
You know, we've seen, they've done accidental research because they had all these babies in an orphanage. You know, the babies that were touched and looked at and held, whether or not they had regular food and blah, 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 whatever, they did better. Like they survived versus the ones that were not, you know.
Yes.
Indifference is a killer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, you know, and yes, life is fucking hard sometimes. It is. And that's part of it.
Yeah.
And so, you know, seek out the people that can hold you. You know, we don't need to fix each other.
Exactly.
Remember,
oh, thank you for saying that. Thank you so much. Oh my God. I can't even tell you how many times I have that conversation in a day. Like, there is nothing to be fixed here. Just hold space, witness, allow, like, let them move through their shit. In the animal kingdom, they move it through their bodies, right? They don't even think about it. It's just naturally what happens. And we do all of these things to stop people from just having their experience. Oh my goodness.
Well, that is it. We
not
think
here to
too
fix
much.
anyone.
We think too much. That is part of it. Yes. So, and the thing is, we don't even really need to fix ourselves, right? You know, everything, it's just transmute it.
Yes.
You know, shift it.
I love that.
And so, and just, you know, again, we just open our eyes and look at what's around us. And there's so many aspects to the story, whatever that story is, the multiple stories that make up your situation, who you are. Take a deep breath. Our power is in our breath. Because our power is also now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, you know, that word now, when you switch it, when you flip it, it's one. So that's that place. You've won when you're here now, because you're empowered. You recognize everything is for your greater evolution. And that love is the foundation of all of it.
Yeah. And that's what creates connection. If I'm here and I'm now and I'm in my body and I'm open and I'm vulnerable, that is when I can connect on the deepest possible levels.
Completely.
I love it.
That's the recipe.
Yeah. See? Okay, we just gave you the recipe.
I know. Like,
no more excuses.
Recipe book, and this amount of love, and this amount of compassion, and this amount of empowerment. Yes.
Oh my goodness, I love it. Oh, yay. Thank you so much, Anne.
Thank you so much for providing this opportunity, space, platform, you know, resonating out, because we're all here. We're all here to teach something.
Yeah.
And we're all here to learn everything.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yay.
All right.
All right.
This is Michelle Marie signing off. Permission to be powerful. I love just even that phrase. I put it out on a Facebook post and people had so many reactions to it. People were like, I don't need no permission. The first thought they had was to flip me off, you know, but then they started to realize all of the areas in their lives where they keep asking for permission rather than giving it to themselves. So thank you for giving us permission through sharing your own journey, your insights, your thoughts, your heart. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, honey.